Hello, and welcome to the first part of the Four-Wing Balanced Sleep in You series. The first part of the series will be discussing sleep fundamentals to increase your understanding of sleep concepts. First, we're going to go over some sleep definitions. First is sleep architecture. This is the cyclical pattern of sleep as it shifts between the different sleep stages. When we talk about sleep architecture, we're meaning the big picture of what our sleep looks like over the course of a night. So the architecture considers not only sleep stages, but also the various depths of sleep and the arousals or periods of awakening. A hypnogram is a graph that depicts a person's sleep architecture. Sleep efficiency is the proportion of sleep in the episode that is potentially filled by sleep. So essentially this means the ratio of total sleep time to total time in bed. Sleep latency is the duration of time between bedtime, or when you get in bed and turn the lights off, to when you start to sleep. And then sleep patterns are a person's schedule of bedtime and wake time, as well as any nap behavior they may have. A person's sleep pattern may also include time and duration of sleep interruptions. Sleep quality is a subjective satisfaction of your sleep experience. This considers factors such as sleep initiation, so when you are able to get to sleep, sleep maintenance, so if you wake up or don't during the night, sleep quality and refreshment upon awakening, so essentially how you feel when you wake up in the morning. There is no clear definition because it is such a subjective measure. Time in bed, or TIB, is the time between lights out to lights on. So essentially the time when you get into bed and turn the lights off and you're ready to get to sleep, and the time when you get out of bed. Total sleep time, or TST, is the amount of actual sleep in a sleep episode. This is equal to total sleep episode less any wake time. This graph shows the sleep duration recommendations from the National Sleep Foundation, which were released in 2015. So these sleep recommendations are based on a consensus reached by experts in various fields, including sleep, anatomy and physique, pediatrics, neurology, gerontology, and gynecology. So as you can see, the sleep needs change during our lifespan. So at the beginning, I'll start right at the beginning here with newborns. So between 0 to 3 months old, you can see that we start off needing between 14 to 17 hours of sleep per day, so quite a bit. Adolescents sleep on average 9 hours per night and prefer to go to bed later and wake up later than adults. So for anybody who has teenagers at home, you might see that happening with your teens. Adults, on the other hand, so any adults we're talking mostly between the ages of 26 to 64, the 18 to 25 years old here. Most adults have one major sleep episode per night. So this is between 7 to 9 hours and generally go to sleep at a regular clock time. So essentially they have a regular routine bedtime. They fall asleep quickly and have very little wakefulness during the night. Some adults do need 6 hours of sleep, where others might need more than 9. They might be around that 10 to 11 to function at their best. However, it's important to keep in mind that short and long sleepers are actually pretty rare, and they represent less than 10% of the Canadian population. So as much as we would like to get, by with less than 6 hours of sleep, we actually can't train ourselves to be a short sleeper. And if we're not an actual short sleeper, this can be quite detrimental to our health. This, of course, is impacted by our lifestyle factors and poor sleep habits because it can disrupt our sleep, an otherwise healthy adult, as well as if you are a shift worker, you may have unique problems as you have to switch between day and night shift. You might have a regular shift work or rotational shift work. So it does impact your sleep schedules. During later life, sleep becomes shorter in duration to approximately 6 hours on average, and there's less time spent in deep sleep. So arousals during the night are more frequent, and there's a tendency to nap during the day. Older adults tend to also prefer to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Our next part is to look at the sleep stages. So essentially this is divided into two. So slow wave sleep, or SWS, which is also called non-REM sleep, and rapid eye movement, REM sleep, or paradoxical sleep. So first we'll look at the slow wave sleep, which is SWS. So this is divided further into light SWS or deep SWS. And so you'll see here on the EEG printout, which is the graph that you have on the screen, a deep SWS shows that the brain waves become slower and show larger amplitudes as our sleep becomes deeper. Rapid eye movement, which is REM or paradoxical sleep, you'll see that the EEG waves are very similar to those that you experience during light SWS or wakefulness. If you aren't aware of what an EEG is, it does measure your scalp brain electrical activity via electrodes. So you may have ever participated in a sleep study or had to go to a neurologist, and you may have experienced an EEG. Looking at non-REM sleep, or NREM, it has 3 different stages, so N1, N2, and N3. We spend approximately 75% of our night in non-REM sleep. N1 is essentially that time between being awake and falling asleep. So as you fall asleep, your thoughts begin to wander and your awareness of the outside world is reduced. N2 is that onset of sleep. So this is where our breathing and heart rate are going to become a bit more regular. Our body temperature is going to drop. More than half the night is actually spent in this stage. And it's a relatively light stage of sleep, which is easy to awaken from. N3 is our deepest and most restorative sleep. So during this time, our blood pressure drops, our breathing becomes slower, our muscles are going to relax, our blood supply to our muscles increase, tissue growth and repair occurs, energy is restored, hormones are released. So this sleep occurs predominantly in the first half of the night during the first 2 sleep cycles. Now moving on to REM sleep, this first occurs approximately 90 minutes after falling asleep. So you can expect 4 to 5 REM episodes per night. The first episode is typically very brief, lasting less than 10 minutes, and the final episode may actually continue for more than an hour. You do experience most of your REM sleep during the early morning, and it is commonly associated with dreaming because your most vivid and bizarre dream reports occur during this stage. However, it is important to realize that dreaming or mental imagery does take place in all stages of sleep. Most of the time after a REM sleep period, the sleep cycle does end with a very brief awakening episode or very light sleep, which most sleepers don't actually recall. Sleep architecture varies across the lifespan and isn't the same if an individual is sleep deprived or has a sleep disorder or sleep-related condition. So you'll notice that even though this is, I described what REM sleep should look like, this may be different across the lifespan. It may be different if you're not sleeping enough or if you have a sleep disorder. Sleep cycles are divided into 90-minute cycles of REM and non-REM sleep. So these cycles are repeated 4 to 6 times during the night. And the sleeper will then cycle through different stages of sleep throughout the course of the night. So normal sleep does include several brief awakenings throughout the night. Healthy sleepers can experience up to 10 short arousals. So these are awakenings, which is just about a few seconds long per every sleep hour. These arousals are often associated with some body movements and are typically forgotten, so we don't actually remember these awakenings. Healthy young adults typically do fall asleep between 10 to 20 minutes. So if you're struggling to get to sleep past that 20-minute mark, then we want to actually get out of bed, do something relaxing outside of our bedroom, and then try to go to sleep when we're tired. If we're doing all we can with our sleep hygiene and our healthy sleep habits and we're still struggling to get to sleep in that 10, 20-minute mark, then it might be time to talk to a healthcare practitioner. So circadian rhythms are rhythms of approximately 24 hours, and they are under the control of what's called the circadian system, which is comprised of a master clock located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN, of the anterior hypothalamus, and several peripheral clocks located throughout the body and the brain. So essentially, circadian rhythms direct a wide variety of functions, including our wakefulness, our body temperature, metabolism, and hormone release. And they synchronize with environmental cues such as light and temperature. Light is the biggest one. So you're supposed to feel more awake when it's light out in the daytime in the morning, and then you want to be tired and go to sleep when it's darker in the evening. So we're looking at why we essentially feel sleepy. Looking at our sleep drive is essentially what makes us dependent on if we need to sleep or not. So our need for sleep is dependent on the number of hours we've been asleep or awake. So there's such a thing as a homeostatic pressure that happens. And the longer we've been awake, the stronger our drive for sleep. So we have an hourglass picture here to essentially give you an image of this. So once the wake reservoir is empty, it creates pressure to turn the hourglass and to go to sleep. So our wakefulness reservoir could be replenished. And when we've had enough sleep, the pressure to wake up is going to be at the highest point because we've had enough sleep. So it'll empty their sleep reservoir and start filling up our wake reservoir again. Now, you've likely heard of people being called early birds or night owls, and these are actually called our chronotypes. Now, a chronotype is essentially a person's circadian topology, and what that means is it's a preference for activity and alertness in the morning or evening. So you may be an early bird, you may be a night owl, you may be actually neither. So early birds, as it means, naturally prefer to be active early in the morning. They wake up early and feel the need to go to bed early. They may have difficulty working or studying in the evening, and they rarely feel the need to lengthen their sleep time in the morning, so they don't really actually want to sleep in. A night owl naturally prefers being active in the evening. They like to go to bed later and wake up later, and they tend to work best in the evening and sometimes at night. Some people are neither. So if a night owl or an early bird doesn't describe you, you may fall into that category of if you're not actually one or the other. Okay, so let's talk about naps, because generally this is a big question from people. People really like their naps. So if you have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep at night, then I know this says you can now, but you really shouldn't. So if you don't have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep at night, then you can nap. If you do have difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep at night, then you shouldn't nap. Otherwise, naps take away from your total sleep time at night. So the optimal duration for a nap is approximately 20 minutes. This may vary, but we really don't want to get into the point of having deep sleep, because then we're going to be groggy when we wake up. In later life, we may see napping increase. So again, in the older adults after the age of 64, napping generally tends to happen, especially later in the day. So let's talk about our views on sleep, or essentially Canadians' views on sleep. So it's been found that more than 1/3 of Canadians sleep fewer hours per night than is recommended, and half of Canadians report that they cut back on sleep and they need to accomplish more during the day. So we find that people feel that pulling an all-nighter or voluntary cutting back on sleep is not a big deal. They don't think that it's going to really hurt them. Now, we've actually found that reducing sleep time could be a short-term solution, but it actually does have quite a bit of impact beyond fatigue. Sleep deficit doesn't just accumulate during one sleepless night, but increases each time a night is shortened and you sleep less than your body needs. So you cannot catch up on sleep or store sleep for the future by getting more on weekends, which I think is quite a big myth that people think, is that, oh, well, I'll cut back on sleep, to get more things done, but I'll sleep in during the weekend, so that'll be fine. And really it's showing that it doesn't work that way. Okay, so that is the end of our first session here, just kind of going through those sleep fundamentals. If you are interested in learning more about sleep, especially learning on what you can do to improve your sleep, please take a look at the rest of our sleep series. We do have, it's a 7-part series here, so you can find all of the rest of them on our Balance library. Thank you.